And Njabala is the figure in a very popular traditional folk story about a lazy girl. And we are told that she is spoilt and doesn't know how to do chores. In some versions, she hasn't been taught. In some versions, she is unwilling to learn. So there's a difference of opinion here. But essentially, at the point of marriage, she doesn't know how to do these chores. And she's always like a warning tale. You shouldn't, this is not how you perform womanhood.
So in our installation, we link or we look at the relationship between seasons of cultivation seasons and the menstrual cycle and seasons of the day.
We start the experience at night time, inspired by the creation story that orders day to start with evening first and then morning, and that's a day. And when you look at how we tell time culturally, we also tell time in evening hours and morning hours. For example, 7 p.m. would be the first o'clock of the night in local time. And so that inspired us to start with night. And if you think about time that way, that means the day was designed to start with rest. And when we relate that to the menstrual cycle, at this point in the installation, the menstrual cycle starts with the menstrual period, which also calls for rest. Just as in the cultivation seasons, ideally the start would be a dry season where the land is left to rest before it is prepared for cultivation in anticipation of the rains.
This is a piece of bark cloth, olubogo, and it has been dyed black using a specific type of clay in Masaka. And I have collaged on here using banana fibers that tell the story of the moon, its pocks, its dips, its many craters. And I was lucky to find a piece of banana fiber that had been turned red, which is not normal. But this matches the menstrual phase that we are in. This helps to tell our story. I didn't grow up with images of African women resting, and it's intentional that she is sleeping in nature, being restored by nature, lying on this yam leaf, a mayuni leaf, surrounded by pumpkins and suju, sweet potatoes. And as this is part of the menstrual phase, I show her holding onto her abdomen, her lower area, because she is menstruating. And at night, this is the right time for her to rest. I'm asserting that rest is her divine right, and it's a way to restore her. It's just been denied to us because womanhood comes with so many demands on us, which take us out of our natural rhythms. This is a really important image for me. So many women need to be reminded to rest and not just to perform.
Our exhibition is speaking of the Njabala folklore, which Birungi has shared about, and we look into the care instruction Njabala receives, and also open it up to what more instruction Njabala can receive. because in the folklore she's being instructed on how to perform as a woman, as a wife, and as a potential mother, but we're opening it up to what care instructions can Njabala receive for herself as a person besides being the wife and the mother. But we also take note of the cultivation instructions that she receives from her mom, her mother's ghost, and we also look into what lessons we can learn from cultivation on how to care for our bodies as women. And a great lesson for this period before rains, in anticipation of rains, is how the land is cared for and also prepared for the rains.
So in these woven sisal forms I've made, I have experimented with a self-developed wild weaving technique. As I want to get closer to nature, I also have to contend with a messy mind that is disordered, but the intention to come to order is there. So in this woven piece, I am depicting the wind and the rain of the rainy season. And these sisal braids interweave, and at times I wanted more order, and I did take it off the loom, so I couldn't maintain that tautness, but also it allowed me to try and see how I react and adjust. So we have these rain and wind forms, and Rebecca talked about preparing the soil and how important that is. We have these mounds of palm leaf, and they're represented here in these banana fiber twists and these seeds. With all of the seeds that we want to sow, we must give ourselves time to prepare, because there is a time for everything, which runs counter to the capitalist narrative that we must be on all the time and we must always strike. I'm trying to remind myself to take the time to be intentional about the seeds that we're sowing. And instruments like this help to imitate the sound of the rain and to bring some focus and attention to the present moment.
The rising sun also speaks to the new season, or the season of things raising and growing, and I guess a lesson from preparation is there will be nothing growing if you do not plant things in the right time. And I think that's a good lesson from cultivation, but also, yeah, it's a good lesson from cultivation. We need to use our moments of introspection to plant new ideas and think about things and plan, so that when the rains come, the things that are growing.
So we've left the spring, the new growth, the follicular phase, and now we're into the harvest. And in the menstrual cycle, we liken that to the ovulation phase. And in the ovulation phase, the egg that has been chosen is released, and in the body, you feel even more beautiful, and everyone else feels more beautiful as well. And in nature, things have grown and we're ready to eat and celebrate. So there are depictions of root vegetables. I wanted to keep those mounds, those banana fiber mounds in there, and show root vegetables kind of speaking to the ovaries and the egg that's been released. We have a depiction of a yam leaf, a mayuni leaf, very big triangular form, and I've also depicted lamonde leaves in this more browny tawny sisal braid. And then, yes, underneath the ground, our crops are growing and they're ready for harvest.
Moving from the spring season, the season of the rains, and we're in the harvest. In the season of the day, this is like into the afternoon when the sun is at its peak, but also in the ovulation phase of the cycle is when our energy is typically highest. Learning from other women that you can actually take advantage of that energy and create as much as possible and increase your workload, so that in the phases where your energy is down, you reduce your workload. So it has been interesting to learn that we can work that way in harmony with our inner rhythms. During the season of harvest, it's a festive season where neighbors are invited and everyone joins in the harvest, and people share food, eat food, and they also get to dry food and store it because everything is in abundance right now. And they know that there is a season where things are not going to be in abundance, so they keep for that season. And I guess if you think about the women who are taking the most of, like, increasing their workload during their peak energy, because they know there's going to be low energy at a certain point, is an interesting correlation to cultivation and how you can make the most of peak times of the seasons. After harvest and after the ovulation phase, if there's no fertilization of the egg, then the follicle that produces the egg starts to die and we get into the luteal phase. And in this phase, that's like into evening, when energy levels are also going down, the sun is going down. And around this time, for a woman, typically there'll be cravings, and it's interesting to learn that that's the body's way of taking in more food to store energy for the next phase, which is the period. And speaking to nutritionists and gynecologists, we're encouraged to pay attention to our cravings and actually give in every now and then, reasonably give in to the cravings. So it was an interesting thing too.
Rebecca gathered this incredible wall showing us a variety of local foods. And we have seen that on a typical plate, we tend to eat the same things, the same kinds of greens, one type of corn, when there's actually a variety that are grown locally. And there's so many other grains we don't really get access to because our lives have become so intensely busy. We don't have time to prepare food from scratch. We don't have stay-at-home wives to do this for us. This is labor we should be paying for. But most of us don't have that access and that luxury to have these incredibly rich meals that are nutrient rich and represent the variety of foods local to us. In our research, and especially if you were talking to your mother about how, as sisters, many of you have had really difficult periods. I had menorrhagia, very heavy periods and cramps that would make me throw up. And it seems like our parents' generation actually didn't have these disturbances. It's not normal to have painful periods. And a lot of research suggests that because we don't eat balanced, nutrient-dense, and a variety of foods that our ancestors need and are used to, it's reacting in our bodies. And also the way that we live, by sitting down too much, not exercising enough, really has an impact on our menstrual cycle and the quality of our lives. So one of the key things that I've taken away from speaking with friends, with elders, with the gynecologist and the nutritionist, is that there is no one superfood. I'd heard that yams were something that are really good for menopausal women. And that is true, but there is no one food that is on top. We need fat, we need salt, we need sugar, we need all the different kinds of foods that are out there. So this wall is a really important way to remind us that there are many ways to be, and it's actually easier if we don't focus on one thing. But our farming practices have changed, and there are fewer companies dictating the market, and then that reflects in what we're eating. But we'd like to remind you to pick choice and to enjoy the variety of local foods, which is why I flew all the way from London to come here and study with you. So we have come to the end of the day. The sun is setting. This is a representation of the sun. We're using raffia, a sisal, sun rays, and bark cloth to represent the earth. And it's looking very disheveled, distressed, and this is something that you would see after the harvest. The stalks are drying. They should just lay there, and they're going to decompose and go back into the earth. And this mirrors the luteal phase that Kara talked about. I'm going to use your names interchangeably. And this is the phase that we should be resting as well as people, as we prepare for the next cycle. This is our installation, Cultivating Rhythms of Care. And we've made this work together in response to the Kla Art Festival theme of care instructions, and also with the kind support of the Makerere Institute of Social Research, who, having seen our proposal, want us to strengthen decolonial and feminist knowledge-sharing practices. And our first point of entry into this work is through song. We've been exploring songs and sounds and rhythms in our bodies and in nature and in the galaxy.
We look at the Njabala folklore, where the character Njabala receives instructions from her mother's ghost on how to cultivate and care for her home as a wife. For our exhibition, we give an open invite to add to the care instructions Njabala receives especially as a human being, as a woman, as a girl. And we look at the relationships between our infradian rhythm, the menstrual cycle, and other rhythms in nature, wondering what lessons we can learn from our foremothers who observed the cycles of the sun and the moon in cultivation, and how we can similarly observe and honor our governing rhythm, the menstrual cycle.